come in that can hear my voice. And just a tiny, quick piece of housekeeping before we get started. The mics are going to be just a little bit different than yesterday. We have the computer set up. And so when you push your button, your mic will not be live. It'll glow green instead of red like it did yesterday. And what that'll do is it'll put you on a queue, and then we'll click it and you'll go live. So you can leave your lights on. You don't have to worry about the microphone being up and going. You can still mute, and then if your microphone is live, and we'll go from there. Okay, so then we will begin our meeting of the Utah State Board of Education as the Utah Schools for the Deaf and Blind meeting. Did our quorum just walk out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm the 8th, so we've got 7 plus 1. Okay. Okay. So we would also like to excuse Chair Huntsman again today, and we will begin with our first action item, which is the approval of the minutes. If anyone would like to make that motion. Okay. Is there a second? Okay, the motion before us is to approve the February 2nd, 2018 meeting minutes. Is there any discussion to that motion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. We did not have anyone sign up for public comment. So we'll move on to the next portion, which is our monthly budget report. Carl Empey.
Good afternoon. We've got a great financial report for you. Everything is looking well on the finances for the schools of the deaf and the blind. If I'm looking at the first report, the financial report, our year-to-date revenues are $21.5 million of a budgeted $35.3 million. So as we're ending or approximating the end of the fiscal year, we still have about $14 million of anticipated revenues that we're going to collect. Our expenditures year-to-date have been $22.6 million out of a budgeted $36.8 million. Which leaves us about $14 million left to expend. If we look at the revenues and look at the revenues collected towards the budget, we're at 61% year to date. And if we look at our expenses and look at the actual expenses incurred to what our projected budget expenses are, we're at 61% as well. So our revenues and budget or expenses are tracking each other very well. Number of students served as of February of 28th, we're serving 1,651. Our enrichment fund balance as of February 28th is $1,552,000. Our donated fund balance is $1,079,000. The next report, the budget status report, just elaborates and gives you more detail of the breakdown of revenues by component line item and the expenses as well by line item. Basically just reflects the 61% revenues and 61% expenses. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have on the financial report or also on the budget status report.
Are there any questions from board members? Okay, there are none.
Great. Thank you.
Does that complete your report?
It does.
All right, thank you. Okay. Next is a statewide testing requirements policy. Superintendent Coleman.
Thank you. So board members, this is a policy that we've been considering for a couple of months. We came and met with your staff here, the special ed department, and Patty and Tiffany, and to talk about kind of I didn't feel like maybe the board was aware of how we do statewide testing, and maybe wasn't even aware that we're not required to do exactly the same things. And so I thought we should just follow the process we usually do, which is putting it in a policy that's clear and easy to understand and bringing it up to you in a board meeting so you're aware of it. You can kind of put your stamp of approval on it and say it's okay. The SAGE test doesn't really work well for our students at all. We still use it with the blind school because the students still have the right to be tested the same way. So until we find something better, we're going to continue to use it, although it doesn't give us useful data at all for them. In the deaf school, we have been for several years now using the MAP tests, which test the core standards in those areas. It's very effective. It gives us really great data. And then as long as we were doing a policy, we thought we'd list a lot of the other assessments we give too. It's not limited to this, but generally these are the testing tools that we use to measure students' progress. Our kids are probably tested more than any other kids on the planet. But anyway, I thought I'd just bring this to you, and then maybe we could have a discussion and answer any questions you have.
Go ahead and click your request button. Okay, go ahead, Member Reeby.
So you said I can understand the blind having struggles with the SAGE test, but we do have a Braille component of the SAGE test. Has that not been effective? I have a couple of questions. And then for the deaf, that also has, it's very visual. I mean, just this last couple of years, we've had text-to-speech universal on all these tests, which seems like that wouldn't be an issue if you were deaf because you're reading it. So I don't, I appreciate you finding an assessment that works best for your population, but my concern is that I would like to see the growth of your school be parallel with the growth of all of our schools. And my concern is if you are using a different assessment, I want to make sure that they are growing at the same rate as the rest of the population. So can you explain why you're choosing a different assessment?
Yeah, would it be okay if I had Superintendent Tanner answer those questions?
Oh, there it is.
And maybe Susan can speak to the blind side.
Yeah, and I have heard Carolyn talk about it. Sometimes it takes, because it's a computer adaptive assessment, so you have to get to the next question, you have to wait for it to be brailled. So you wait, and then it goes to the next question, send it to the brailer, wait, come back, and I know that takes an extensive period of time. It's, how long was, about 3 days to a week with some of the kids on just that one?
Yeah, and
Sorry.
I can speak.
Just a second, it's not on.
Sorry.
go ahead.
Okay, there I am. I mean, yes, that is correct. And the discussion that we've had in blind directors meeting has been that very thing, is the time that it takes to actually go from what is written and then into Braille. So it does make it a very long and laborious test for our blind kids. A lot of the parents, too, opt to not take the SAGE test, which is an issue, but that's not that we're not encouraging that, or that's not that we're not telling them the options and how those modifications can be made as well.
From what I understood from talking with Carolyn is that there was such a bad experience for the students that all of their students that take the SAGE have now opted out because the parents are like, it was a grueling time for them. For the deaf students, speech to text doesn't, or text to speech doesn't really help them very much because that's the problem. So we hire interpreters when they have the interpreters. It still makes it extends the time in a significant amount of time, and it puts it out farther. It also, translations can change from interpreter to interpreter. We spent about $7,000 to $8,000 to administer this test, and then the results come back after a while. The kids who are sitting there staring at the interpreter are just pushing their buttons because it's just taking such an inordinate amount of time.
Go ahead. Board Member Reeby.
Thank you. So with every test they take that's written, do you have an interpreter there for them to have that?
On the reading portion of the test, no.
Okay.
No, they take it just like everybody else does. The one thing that is they'll give you, then as you probably are aware, if it's a 9th grade test, it gives you the 9th grade level. And I have some kids that may be on a 1st or 2nd grade reading level because of the nature of a language disability.
Yep.
And it doesn't tell me what they know. It doesn't even gauge progress. It just tells me they can't read 9th grade reading. And so whereas the MAP assessment is put out by NWEA, and it not only compares them to other deaf populations, because all the other deaf schools in the nations are, I shouldn't say all, but majority are using the MAP. It compares them to other deaf students and then compares them to all the norms. They have got norms and they're using the core curriculum. So I can compare the child to themselves, to other deaf people, and to all the children across the United States.
So when we go to this other assessment, is this assessment federally approved? And would it be that Utah would have now more kids opting out because we're taking a different assessment? Or would this assessment run in conjunction with the assessment that we're giving? So right now we're in a process of asking for a waiver because we have such a high opt-out. Are all these students considered opted out of our assessment that we use in Utah as our federal guidelines? Or are they considered to be taking a federally approved assessment that keeps them as opted in?
We met about that and discussed that. We've given the map for several years now, and they've been given both of them simultaneously. And so we've been taking and tracking data. So right now, no. One of the things that we're talking about is in our discussions with staff here is that this would be assessment that we would substitute in place of that assessment to show growth and progress of the students. So yes, it'll be reported federally.
And so it's not reported as an opt-out, it's reported as an acceptable federal
I should ask
assessment.
Leah if she knows it's reported as an opt-out.
Maybe I can speak to that. In board rule, USDB is not currently required to give the SAGE test per se. We have been, and it's just been a complete
Nightmare.
waste of time. But we are obligated to still measure the kids and give them an assessment that measures the same things. So they still have the right to be assessed on that. And so that's part of the reason we want to have this discussion. And comparing our schools to other schools it's not even the same kind of comparison on the SAGE. It doesn't really give us any meaningful data to even analyze that.
I'm totally okay with you not taking the SAGE if you feel like that's not an effective tool. My secondary question is now, is this considered to be part of, I mean, even as board rule says we don't have to administer the SAGE for these students, is it adding to our opt-out rule? So I
don't know.
That's really just parent-driven. It doesn't, but the assessment does cover the bases we need to cover, like you were saying, as far as measuring the things are needed to. But it doesn't really, the opt-out has just been parents that have done it because their kids are having a miserable experience, so.
And we've had many parents that have been opting out of SAGE for many years now, because it just is, it's a very arduous thing to show up to school for that length of time to take that test.
But can we use the assessment that you're using
Yes.
as a federal thing? So you're not opting out, you're actually
We're
supplementing with a different one, so that's
we've been doing it, but
perfect.
now it'd be more of a substitute.
Great, thank you.
Board Member Hanson.
I was just going to make a comment that's circling around to remember the report that Leah gave yesterday on the special ed kids that weren't, the parents were opting them out because they feel it like it's a grueling test. So it's kind of the same situation.
Yes.
Board Member Beebe.
Could I please have Darren or Leah clarify this information?
I've got a few questions that have come up as I've listened to a little bit of this conversation, as we've seen some emails. When I look at Board Rule 404, which we discussed quite at length in our committee this morning, it identifies the tests by name that are approved to be used in our statewide accountability system. And for the students with disabilities, you have the Utah Alternate Assessment, you have the UALPA, so the DLM. The MAPS test is not listed on there as an approved test in board policy. And I'm not sure where it excludes the schools for the deaf and blind. That's something that would be new to me. Knowing where in board rule it provides an exclusion for the entire population. I can tell you when we order assessments with AIR in the future with Questar, we do order a certain number of Braille assessments, which are additional cost. So from an assessment perspective, especially being new to the state office, my understanding was we did use those statewide assessments because the standards are still the same standards, that we still administered those. So I actually have more questions, I think, than I could offer clarity on.
So, and I will add one question. I completely agree with Superintendent Tanner and talking about what Superintendent Lassiter has said about the test being grueling, especially for blind students. And it is long and arduous for deaf students to use an interpreter. I completely agree. However, I also agree with Darren. gone to a lot of trouble and expense to try to make it accessible, which we can always improve. Another question that needs to be added is USDB is not accountable to state turnaround, but is likely still accountable to federal school improvement. That's something that we're going back and forth with the Department of Education about. But if they are considered an LEA, all schools have to be held accountable, have to be included when we calculate the lowest 5% of schools for school improvement. And so we would have to figure out some way to include USDB schools in the school improvement calculation. However, we've already been working on that in the work group that you created that I reported on last board meeting to how to include alternate schools in accountability. USDB would not be the only alternate school. We came up with a solution to send to the federal government for 23 of them, and now we are working on all of the rest of the schools that could be considered alternate. Superintendent Coleman has agreed to serve on that work group going forward to address the rest of the questions that you have assigned us to address. So we would already be trying to work on that issue. This would just add one more complication to that work group, which is if everybody else is taking SAGE and one group of schools is taking MAP, how do we include that information? Do we do a statistical analysis relationship? Do we, convert the scores so that they're similar? But that's what the purpose of the work group is, so we can tackle that issue.
Board Member Lisa Cummins.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the problem with standardized testing. One test does not fit all students. My question is, how long have you been using MAP? And have they been, I see that it's national, I'm on their website. How have they been scored comparisons to other states who are using MAP? And how are they faring? I think that would be the linear look that you would have to look at, because you can't take SAGE and compare it to MAP from what I'm looking at. So any answers to that question, those questions?
We've been using MAP for over 4 years. So we've been supplementing and doing it both because we found that SAGE wasn't meeting our needs. And so we found a tool that was. And then in comparison to other schools, the deaf students are delayed amongst the regular ed students. That's what I've noticed a trend. There have been same ballpark though with the other deaf students.
Okay.
And so that's what we've noticed as a trend. The thing that's also nice about MAP is it gives us immediate feedback. So we can see on an individual basis and write goals and IEP goals as the child goes along. As soon as that test window's closed, we have data. We put it on IEPs.
So
we utilize it. We don't have to wait.
Spring or fall.
Right.
That's good. So I just wanted to point out this compares to what charters could use, as far as finding their own assessment and comparing it on a national basis to help fit their students. It's just a good example that standardized testing is not working.
Can I make a comment?
Go ahead, Superintendent.
So one thing I might like to add to the conversation here is we were actually just willing to continue to struggle through and give SAGE as a perfunctory thing, but it was your staff here that brought it to our attention that USDB is specifically not included as an LEA in the testing rule. And so that's when we started asking the question, oh good, so can we stop doing this silly exercise that we're going through? And that's what kind of led to this. So it's not, I just wanted you to kind of know the background there. And I think we should have further discussions about accountability because it needs to happen, not at this point, of course, but I would like this to be more of a discussion in the future. We really want to be accountable, and we want to measure our students, And I just think the whole thing needs to be kind of considered, and we want the board to be partners with us, so we just don't try to run off on our own and do something without your awareness. And this is just the first step in that.
Board Member Bolter?
I want to make sure that we don't force a test that clearly isn't working on a certain population just in the name of data. This won't come as a surprise. I encourage parents to opt out, especially parents of special needs children, because if they are in 6th grade, but they're on a 3rd or 4th grade level, it is testing that 6th grade on that 6th grade level. And so they are already set up for failure. And there's other reasons why parents opt out of this test, and I will not trump that right. But to say that, to even think about forcing a test on, and to meet federal compliance so that we can get federal money, which it came out, I think, in the 16-17 thing that it's only like a 6.6% of federal monies now that we're getting, that we're willing to force something like this for so that we can be compliant to the federal government that has no right in saying what we can and cannot do.
Board Member Reevy?
I am glad you chose a test that works for your population. I administer these assessments, and it is nice to have data back immediately. And that is one of the benefits of these things, that when we assess kids, we understand where they're at. Is there a way that we can bring MAP into our realm of accepted tests? Because I am familiar with UALPA, I am UA, the DLM, I am familiar with those ones. Is there a way that we can bring this into the accepted assessments? Is that maybe part of the solution? And I do understand that it's hard to assess kids when they are not succeeding at the same rate as everybody else, but there is some value into understanding why they are not exceeding or having success at the same rate. And I do believe that every kid deserves to have an opportunity to excel. So when we assess kids, we sometimes get to see why. And is this something we can do? Can we bring the MAP into our accepted? Or is that too much is that like something that's not within our?
The rule that I'm referencing is a board rule, so you would have the complete authority to decide what assessments are on that list and which ones aren't.
Okay. So this is an item of action. So is there anybody that would like to take action on this particular policy? Board Member Bolter?
So could we make a motion to add the, or no?
This is not our board rule that we are approving. This is we are acting as the board of USDB at the moment, and so we're approving a USDB policy, which is their testing policy. And so that's what is before us as an action item right now.
Well, I move that we accept this policy. Sorry, I'm not sure exactly what I need to say.
Is there a second? So the motion before the board is to approve USDB's student assessment policy. Is there any discussion to that motion? Superintendent Dixon? Hold on just one second. It takes a second to... Okay, go ahead.
Oh, you've got technology, more technology. She's got a lot.
I'm not sure if it's...
Okay. I just want to clarify, there is a board rule that lists USDB as an LEA. So I don't want that confusion that you're not an LEA. I can't quote you the rule, but there is a rule. Maybe somebody, maybe our AAG knows the rule. Angie's not in here.
Can you go ahead and click on your... Sorry.
Maybe I can.
Whoa. Sorry. Okay. Go ahead.
I can speak to that.
Oh.
Sorry.
Sorry. This may be interesting. Okay. So Brian, go ahead.
Okay, so AAG Scott Jones just found this for me. It's R277-100-2, and it's subsection, looks like 9, that addresses the LEA definition.
Can you read it?
Let's see. Can I sing it? Oh, see it? You come. I scrolled up and down.
Okay, so B, for purposes of certain rules, LEA or local education agency may include the Utah Schools for the Deaf and the Blind if indicated in the special rule.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's,
Thank you.
okay.
And in this rule in particular, we are not listed. That's what your staff brought to our attention, in the assessment rule. And so that's what precipitated all of it. Oh, just by way of explanation, since this is just our internal policy, I'm not wedded to it, and it's not some language that I want to die over, but it's kind of our business practice, how we're going to proceed, and that's why I wanted to bring it to the board. We'd be happy to continue working with staff. If we need to tweak this and improve it in any way, we're very, very comfortable with that. This just gives us kind of marching orders going forward right now.
Red when it's hot. Is it on now? Okay. Okay. Just as a reminder that the reason why these policy comes to us is not as acting as the State Board of Education. So we are USDB's board, and so this is a specific policy that doesn't apply to anyone except for USDB. So just that clarification that's why it comes to us, and it may seem like micromanaging in our other role, but this is our role as USDB's board. So, okay, Board Member Lisa Cummins, did you have a comment? Okay.
Can I make a motion that we bring to Standards and Assessments Committee?
So just to interrupt, we have a motion on the table, which is currently to approve this policy. So that would not be germane to this discussion unless you're trying to make an amendment. Are you trying to amend the
No,
policy
I don't want to amend
motion?
the policy. I'll
You
make
could-
it after we vote on this.
Okay. Okay, Board Member Hanson?
That was mine. Can I not make an amendment to add that we ask the Board of Education to review it and take it to, look at board rule on this policy to make sure this policy conforms with board rule? It's in addition to.
So your amendment would be to, I'm sorry, is there anybody that'd like to just clarify? So the amendment would be to continue to approve the policy.
Approve the policy and ask the Board of Education to review it and see if it conforms to board rule.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion? Okay. So the motion before us is to amend the motion to approve to add that this policy would be taken to the State Board of Education and to check to see if it is compliant to board rule.
Can I speak to that?
Yes, Board Member Hanson.
And so I'm thinking if the Board of Education looks at this and finds out that we're not, those assessments are not in board rule, like we've heard that they probably aren't, then it can go forward and we can talk about perhaps adding that as an assessment, the approved assessment.
Okay. Is there any further discussion to that amendment? Okay, so the amendment before us Sorry, this light thing's going to drive me bonkers. Okay. So the amendment before us is to amend the motion to also require that this policy, once passed, would come to the State Board of Education and compare it to its compliance with State Board rule. If there's no further discussion, all in favor say aye. Oh, okay. Board Member Reeby.
I had to hear the amendment to make sure that this was germane to the conversation. If this comes to the state school board and we make this decision on behalf of the LEA, does this meet the requirements of a free and public education for our students, and does it fit in that parameter?
Is there anyone that would like to answer that question? Quiet discussion taking place.
So I'm not trying to be
Nope, that's okay.
problematic, but I really want to make sure that we are doing what we can to make sure these students are held, given the same opportunities as everybody else. And so if we're going to create a parallel assessment, I want to make sure that we are doing the best we can to make sure that we are meeting these. And then I guess also, how many students would be, how many students fit into this category? Because I know that many of you students in your schools have multiple learning disabilities, and I can see that many of them would probably take the DLM or the UALPA instead of SAGE, or none of them take not that many, so most of them would fit into this situation where they're supposed to take the SAGE. Okay.
Go ahead.
So to address the FAPE issue, I don't think there's an issue. I think that still meets the requirements of FAPE. I think USDB really considering the issues and trying to do what's best by their students is in the best interest of FAPE, actually.
Thank you.
Okay. And just a reminder, we're speaking to the amendment, so Board Member Bolter.
I just wanted to clarify, the idea for this would then be that if we did find, like, MAP or whatever wasn't listed in a board rule, then we would fix that. Is that the idea to this motion?
Board Member Hanson.
Yes, but that would be up to whatever committee reviewed it, so.
Okay. So seeing no further discussion, the amendment is to request that this policy go to the State Board of Education for review in comparison to board rule. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so the amendment passes. So now we're back to the main motion, which would be to approve the USDB student assessment policy and have that, once approved, the rule to go to the State Board of Education for comparative review with State Board rule. Is there any discussion to that main motion? Okay, and seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so that passes unanimously. Okay, next on our agenda is the Deaf-Blind Division report with Susan Patton.
That she would help me because apparently I got disconnected, so.
If you could please introduce yourself.
Yes, I will. I am Susan Patton, and I'm the Director of Deaf-Blind Services with USDB, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm always happy to be able to share what good things we are doing with deaf-blind services and with our students with both the hearing and the vision loss. Just a little about our students. We, again, serve students and children. We serve birth through age 22, so we are part of our early intervention system and part of our Part B system. And deaf blindness is a very, very low incident disability, so our students in deaf-blind require a lot of significant supports. We also have students who are are on a large spectrum. We have students who have very multiple and significant disabilities, all the way up to students who are performing on grade level in a high school with some minor supports. So we have to do our best to meet all of those needs of all of those students. In the state of Utah, we have around 150 students with deafblindness, which again is very low incident, and nationally, deafblindness is an extremely low disability. So with that, I'm excited to share with some things that we do here in Utah that are actually different than anywhere in the nation, and then answer any questions that you have as far as how we do it and what we're doing. I'm sorry, now I'm kind of looking at okay, there he goes. Very good, thank you very much. Just think about for just a minute what it would be like, how your world would change without your vision and your hearing. You think about that, and I don't know why that's not, there we go. Think about that, and every aspect of your life would change to some degree. But there's three components that I have thought of over the years and that would change in my life in particular. First of all, social interactions would change. The relationships that we have with people, with our family members, with our friends, with our colleagues, and even just people as you're walking down the street or in the grocery store that you might smile at or say hi to. All of those interactions would change. The other thing is incidental learning, where we walk into a room, we immediately assess who's in the room, kind of what they're wearing. We assess where the exits are. We assess the structure of the room. We assess kind of what's going to be happening in that meeting or in that group. Our students miss that. They miss all of it. And so it's our job in Deafblind Services to bring that incidental learning in a way that our students can learn and can find out to the best of our ability, what's happening in the world around them. And the other thing is communication, and communication just as a whole, both receptively and expressively. We have to find ways for our students to be able to receive information correctly and to know what's expected of them, and then we have to find ways that they are expressing themselves and to have other people understand the way they are communicating. As I said, we are serving the students with both the hearing and the vision loss. I like to think about a definition that's not a federal definition or a state definition, but one that is very easy for me to understand, and that is deafblind students or students with deafblindness do not have the hearing ability to compensate for their vision, nor do they have the vision to compensate for their hearing. We don't have any students in the state of Utah at this time who are completely deaf and completely blind. Most of our kids have at least some residential hearing and some residential vision, or one or the other. Does that make sense? So we have had in the past students who are completely deaf and completely blind, and that is extremely a large challenge. Here's just some small statistics in the state of Utah. We serve 10% of our students are in our early intervention system before the age of 3 or homeschooled. We have 75% as of June of 2017 that are served in our urban school districts or along the Wasatch Front. And then we have 15% in our rural districts. Deafblind Services serves all of the state of Utah, every district, every early intervention agency. And so we're different in some aspects that way. This is not extremely important, but I just wanted you to see that the structure of Deafblind Services, that we have myself as the director, and then we have a deafblind lead teacher who is kind of a mentor and instructional coach all over the state. We have 12 deafblind teacher specialists serving statewide. 8 of those teacher specialists are full-time, with 4 of them being part-time. And then under those deafblind teacher specialists, they serve 85 interveners. And then we have our office support staff. We have 2 different elements in Deafblind Services. We have our educational piece, and then we have our federal project piece. Over the one that is in the pink right there is they're designated for our federal project, the Utah Deafblind Project. Our project coordinator, and then our family support specialist. So we're utilizing our federal money that is a 5-year grant, which is we're in our 5th year of the cycle, which gives me great anxiety as far as a rewrite is concerned, but it also makes me very excited to think about the next 5 years and what we want to accomplish there. Within the deafblind educational services, which is funded through the state and USDB, we have two components. We have our deafblind teacher specialists, those 12, and then we have our interveners. And the deafblind teacher specialists, we're very, very unique in the state of Utah. Every student who was identified with deafblindness, not classified deafblind, but identified with deafblindness, received services from a deafblind teacher specialist statewide. That is not happening in any other state in the nation. And there's a few reasons for that, and I'd be more than happy to go into that, but we don't have a lot of time to do that. Our specialists, our teacher specialists, provide both direct services for our student and consultative services with the IEP teams, teachers, families, because of our federal project, and our interveners. Then we have our interveners. Our interveners are paraeducators who work one-on-one with our deafblind students. They are imperative in ensuring that our students are receiving the education that they need, and again, providing that incidental learning, the liaison between the student and their environment, peers, adults, everything. We have two things that I think are most important that our interveners are doing. Number one, they're facilitating communication. They're facilitating communication. They're there so the student is acknowledged when they have expressive communication, and also that we're providing the best way to communicate with them receptively. And then the other thing is that they're providing access to the information around them. It goes back to that incidental learning. It's imperative that our interveners are trained and that they know what information is important for the student to receive instruction and in their education. One thing that is interesting, not 100% of our students receive an intervener. It's an IEP team's decision, as are all of our services. But we have around 145 students. We served 163 students last year as of June of 2017. We have, on any given day, we have about 85 to 90 interveners, and some of those interveners are substitute interveners. So there are a lot of IEP teams that are deciding that the intervener is probably not the best option, that we need to provide other supports, because we walk a very, very fine line on creating an independency versus a dependency on one person. So we're very, very well aware of that. Our Utah Deafblind Project is funded through the Office of Special Education, and it's a training and technical assistant grant. It allows us to kind of broaden our horizon as far as training and technical assistance. We're able to go into schools to work with classroom teams that we might not work as intensely with. We're able to provide a dual sensory conference in the fall where we invite every educator in the state of Utah who is working with a student with deafblindness, all related service providers that are working with students with deafblindness, and administrators, plus all of USDB is invited to that. It's a very large conference. We bring experts in specific to deafblindness. However, we always make sure that those experts are experts in maybe behavior or communication, so teachers come to these conferences and they don't feel like they are only going to be able to provide strategies for their deafblind student. We make sure that we're meeting the needs there through evaluation. The other component of the deafblind, or our Utah Deafblind Project, is our family support piece, which is outside of the educational services. And it is something that our families are able to network with one another and build support with one another through different groups. We provide a parent conference every fall that's in conjunction with our statewide conference. And that parent conference on a Friday night, we have a keynote speaker, and then the next day on Saturday, it's only families and it's all content. So they're receiving the same information in kind of a modified way, but it's same information that our professionals and our interveners are receiving. It's imperative that our parents know how and know how to provide deafblind strategies. Just really quick, these are some of the activities that our project funds. Intervener training. Our interveners go through 1 year worth of rigorous training that is mandated for them to be able to be employed the next year. It does not pay for our in-seat training. It doesn't pay for their salaries. What it pays for is the actual content of the training itself for whomever we bring in to provide that training. The other thing that is so exciting for us to do, it's quite time-consuming, but we love it, are our deafblind simulations and what we have called our targeted school trainings. And that is where we identify needs based on evaluations and surveys throughout the state for, it might be an elementary school, junior high school, it might be the faculty, the severe teachers in one district, and we go down and we provide them with a deafblind simulation and a basic overview on deafblindness. They are very, very well received, and I think that based on our surveys and our evaluations, our students, we might have one student or two students in a school. However, once all of the students in that elementary school or junior high school know about deafblindness, you would be so surprised on the increase of social interaction that happens because of that. So, and the parents are always involved with those as well. And then for our family support, I talked about the parent conference. The other thing is our family activity day. We have 2 days in June where we bring our families in, and this is a little different than our parent conference in that we encourage our families to bring their siblings. We encourage our families to bring extended family, grandparents and cousins. Sometimes we have no idea how big how big it might get, but they're able to enjoy the day with their students with deafblindness and once again build those networking relationships that is critical. One of the things that we're working on this year that I really want to push is our social media element, because I think that that's where we're going to be meeting the needs of our families and other service providers that we haven't been able to meet. So we are currently looking at ways that we can expand that. We have a motto in deafblind, and it's really not, it's not only solely for deafblind services, but there's rarely a meeting that we have within our division that we aren't talking about something like this. And it's the main thing is to keep the main thing, the main thing. And I don't like the word thing, I'm not gonna lie, I don't like the main thing. However, we need to make sure that we're focused, everything we do, whether it's paperwork, whether it's reports, and all of that, we all do all of that, which everybody knows. How is that impacting our students? It all is impacting our students. If we don't have the right data, that's impacting our students. So we always are trying to focus on the students and making sure that what we're doing is impacting our students. I do have a small video, but I don't know about time. It's a 3-minute video, so I'm happy to show it or I'm happy to skip it as well. We're okay? All right, I just want to make sure. This video, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea on just to see our students. I think that impacts, has a great impact. This video that I'm going to show, the top video, is actually about 6 or 7 years old, so some of the statistics that you'll see in there may be outdated, and I'm more than happy to answer any questions on the statistics. The bottom one is our new one, however, it's a little longer, so I'm not going to show that one. So with that, I'm going to show you this, and then I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Can you hear that?
Hi. This is Becky. Hi, Christoph. How are you? Oh, I'm so glad you're having a good day.
She has to find it. Good job. There you go.
So he chose he needs a break.
Okay, that is the end of my presentation. Is there any questions that you want to ask me now, or you can ask me at a later time, or any? Okay. Oh, stop. Michelle does it. Michelle, help me.
Okay, first we
Okay.
have Board Member Reeby. Sorry, just 1 second. Sorry, there you go.
Thank you. I have worked in severe units, and it is amazing the difference in their lives when they have the proper interventions. So on the second or third slide, it said that 15% of the rurals come to have services and 75% of the urban.
Mm-hmm.
This concerns me, and I'm wondering how we can support you with this, because this seems like an equity issue with urban and rurals.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just the kids, but it's the families. If they feel isolated with this student, it makes the student's life so much better. So how can we help you in increasing that number of 15% in rurals? Because that is concerning to me. Or
Well,
what steps are we taking?
Well, I
to
think
help you?
there's a couple of things. Certainly, we are aware of that problem. We want to make sure that our rural school districts, first of all, know that there's this service, and that's been a problem. So I meet with special education directors throughout the state, and I try to do that throughout the whole year, and I'm talking about all of them and not just a few of them that have our students, so that they have a packet of information about in case they have a student with deaf blindness. Those students, the 15%, are located in those very rural areas. Those aren't counting the Smithfield or those kinds of areas, but we're counting those in Kanab, Loa, Vernal, those very extremely rural areas. However, it's always a concern that we're getting the referrals. That's the biggest thing. And I can't tell you how much of an angst it is if we hear there's a fourth grader that has some vision and hearing issues that maybe nobody has reported. It helps, it really helps if they have both the vision and the hearing working in that school. If that happens, we get the referral. A lot of times, teachers take it upon themselves, and it's not in a bad way. It's they're trying to accommodate all of the needs of the student and are so overwhelmed. But they might say, you know what, mom reported a very mild hearing loss. He has vision issues, and we're addressing those needs. The thing that we're not addressing or that we're not remembering is, does he have enough vision or does hearing to compensate for that vision? Or they'll say, I call him across the room, he hears me. And there might be a lot of other things. So those are some of the problems that we do encounter. And honestly, I wish I had all of those answers. I think we are working to do. There's always room. So any type of advice or any type of ideas, we are more than happy to listen to.
I'd love to support you in getting those family services, because it's so enriching for the family to have
Absolutely.
that support. So thank you for all you do.
I will say one thing, though. We do have, this year we are not doing it because it's the 5th year of our grant cycle. The past 2 years, we've done a St. George conference where we've tried to focus on our Southern Utah families, because sometimes it's not feasible for them to come up to our parent conferences and our National Abilities Days and training things. So we have done that, which has been very well attended, not only for families with deaf-blind students, but students with other significant disabilities. So, thank you.
So watching your video reminded me, my daughter used to be an intervener, and she loved it. She loved it, and she's a special ed teacher now. And it was such a great experience for her. And that's kind of what I wanted to say. You know, a lot of times we talk about these kids have all these needs, and it's a burden on the family, but you know what? It's a blessing to the family as well. And it certainly enriched her life to be able to work with special needs kids. And so thank you for providing that, not just for the kids, but for the adults who get to work with them.
Go ahead. Yep.
One quick thing about that. We have a large percentage of our interveners that go through intervener training that's rigorous. They can receive credit through the University of Utah, that end up in special education. And honestly, that's my goal, because we've got some phenomenal interveners. We are also the only state in the nation, that was on one of my slides, but I neglected to mention it, who hires or employs teachers with a deafblind endorsement. There are a couple other states, a couple other universities who are working toward getting that endorsement, but they're not there yet. And they don't have the support system in place to hire those teachers with a deafblind endorsement. So our teachers right now, actually 9 out of the 12 of our teachers are deafblind endorsed, but they've also been interveners first. So we've kind of grown our own. Not that that's that's not what we're going only for, but that's what happens. So it kind of captivates us. Thank you for that.
Okay, I don't see any other questions from board members. Thank you very much for your presentation. We are going to go ahead and postpone the next agenda item until our next board meeting, and we'll go to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'll make this pretty simple, I think. I've included in your packets the list of our key initiatives again, which you've seen before, and I highlighted several of them. I'll probably kind of proceed this way in the future, so it's clear where they fit into my items fit into our overall scope. The first thing I wanted to let you know is that this coming Thursday we'll be having our inaugural meeting for the USDB Foundation. Finally, we've got some really great volunteers from the community that we think will be helping us in the future, and so that's going to start rolling. Under item 2, parent initiatives, we have engaged the services of a professor at Utah State part-time to help us develop our ASL curriculum for families. It's going to be online and accessible to them. They can still come to classes at our schools, but this will be more accessible for them on their schedule as well, and that will help improve it. We have a surprisingly high number of families that don't sign when their children sign, and so we're hoping to improve that. And we're just about finished with our survey of families around the state who do not have broadband access, and we're going to be providing that through our enrichment funding in future years. And we have the blind and the deaf schools both reaching out and making sure there's no family that does not have access for their children at home. And most of them do. It's not going to be a large number, but we want to make sure everyone is covered. Also, our USIMAX sustainability.
Sorry, just one second. Do you have a moment for a question?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Board Member Cannon?
Thank you. You've caught my interest with ASL Online. I have a little granddaughter who has Down syndrome. She's 3 years old, and she signs to me, and I just go, oh. Is this available to other people, or does it just within your community? Or
No, this should be available to the public.
Okay.
We're designing it for our parents to help encourage them and simplify it, but no, it will be available to anyone.
Can you send it out to us when it's available?
Oh yeah, it'll probably take a year or so to develop well, but.
You mean I have to learn something on my own before then? Okay. Thank you, Joel.
Great question. Okay, our USIMAX sustainability plan, we received our funding from the legislature this year, starting July 1st, so we're doing some restructuring there of leadership and other things, and we're very excited in the next few years to be able to keep up with the demand for Braille and large print, things where we've been struggling to do that lately. So I just wanted to report that that was approved. Thumbs up. We're very happy about that. Under our master communications plan, you might have noticed that the Friday letter has started again. We had a vacancy in our communications director position, and now that we've brought Susan on board, she picked right up on that, and so we're back in your email boxes, hopefully not being filtered to your junk mail. But and also we just met earlier this week with the company that is going to overhaul our entire website, make it much better, much more robust and accessible to everybody in the world. It's already accessible technically, but it's just not a well-designed website. We kind of did a temporary one when I first came on board, and now we're ready to really do it the right way. So that will be updated hopefully in the next couple of months. Springville campus rolling forward, just on track. We're on schedule and nothing much new to report there. And the last few items have to do with regulatory barriers. The Law and Licensing Committee today considered a rule that will be coming to you in the future meeting about 3% rule revisions and placement of students, and so nothing to report there, but just that it's on the docket. And finally, the testing rule that we discussed. We've already talked about that. So that's my report for now, unless you have any additional questions about anything for me.
Board Member Reeby.
This is a little tangential, but there is a website, and I thought this was fascinating. I learned this at NASB. There is a national broadband map, and you can actually look at the discrepancies from community to community with broadband. And when we look at these situations, it's hard for us living here, but not maybe for you living where you live, to see that there is a huge difference between accessibility and it's not a level playing field. So I appreciate you recognizing that. But I thought the map was really cool. If you want to look at national broadband map, it's kind of exciting if you're me. I don't know how you guys will respond.
It is.
Board Member Lear.
Something just caught my attention at the end of this outline, Joel, and it says initial placement of deaf ASL students from out of state. And so I guess I'm asking if we're serving ASL, if we're